Let me tell you something that most people never hear until it's too late to use it. There comes a day when the room goes quiet. The applause stops. The people who cheered for your beginning are nowhere to be found for your middle, and in that silence, you are left with one voice, your own. That day is not a punishment. That day is an invitation, because here is the truth nobody prepares you for. You were never meant to walk this entire road surrounded. Some parts of your life are group projects, but the deepest parts, the parts that actually shape who you become, are solo work. Nobody can build your discipline for you. Nobody can carry your character on their back and hand it to you finished. Nobody can sit in the chair, do the reps, read the pages, make the calls, and hand you the result like a gift. You have to walk that part alone. And walking alone is not the tragedy people think it is. Walking alone is the curriculum. Think about every person you admire. Think about the ones who built something real, something that outlived the trend, something that people still talk about long after the noise faded. Every single one of them has a season in their story that nobody else was invited into. A season of empty rooms, a season of quiet mornings, a season where the only person clapping was the version of themselves they were trying to become. That is not coincidence. That is the price of becoming someone. Most people never pay that price. They want the version of themselves that walked alone and built something extraordinary. But they are not willing to be alone long enough to build it. They want the muscle without the isolation of the gym at 5 in the morning. They want the wisdom without the quiet nights of study nobody applauded. They want the freedom without the years of discipline that nobody saw. So they stay where it's comfortable, surrounded by people, surrounded by noise, surrounded by opinions, and they wonder years later why they never became who they were capable of becoming. Comfort is loud in its own quiet way. Comfort doesn't scream at you. It whispers. It says, you're doing fine. It says there's no rush. It says everyone else is still figuring it out too, so you have time. And you believe it because it feels kind. But comfort is not kind. Comfort is patient. It will wait as long as it takes for you to trade your potential for convenience, one small yes at a time. Nobody falls asleep one night as a disciplined, focused, powerful version of themselves and wakes up the next morning average. It happens slowly. It happens in the small trades. You trade the workout for the extra hour of sleep. You trade the hard conversation for the easier silence. You trade the book for the scroll. Each trade seems small. None of them feel like betrayal in the moment. But betrayal doesn't always look like betrayal. Sometimes it looks like a Tuesday. This is why walking alone matters. Not because people are bad. Not because you should isolate yourself out of bitterness or pride. But because there are seasons where the only way to hear your own voice is to turn down everyone else's. The world is loud. Everyone has an opinion about your pace, your path, your choices, your timeline. Everyone has advice, usually unsolicited, usually built from their own fears dressed up as wisdom. But very few people are willing to actually walk your road with you when it gets steep. And even fewer understand why you're climbing it in the first place. So you learn something important. You learn to trust your own commitment more than you trust the crowd's opinion. Think about a young tree standing in an open field. Nobody protects it from the wind. Nobody shields it from the storm. It stands there, exposed season after season, taking every gust the sky sends. And you would think that tree, left alone like that, would be weak, fragile. But the opposite happens. Every storm forces its roots deeper into the ground. Every harsh season it survives becomes strength stored beneath the surface, invisible to anyone walking by. By the time that tree is fully grown, it doesn't bend in the wind that would topple a tree raised in a greenhouse. It stands, because it was never protected from what made it strong. You are the same. The lonely nights are not proof that something has gone wrong. They are proof that roots are forming. The moments when nobody understands your vision are not evidence that your vision is wrong. They are evidence that you are early. The disappointments, the people who left, the doors that closed without explanation, these are not just obstacles in your way. They are opportunities to build roots that no comfortable life could have given you. I want you to sit with a question for a moment. Not a question to answer out loud. A question to answer, honestly, in the quiet part of your mind where you can't perform for anyone. Who are you when nobody is watching? Not who are you when the camera is on. Not who are you when someone might be impressed. Who are you at 5 in the morning when the alarm goes off and no one would ever know if you hit snooze? Who are you when the promise you made to yourself is inconvenient and there is zero chance anyone finds out if you break it? That version of you, the one that exists in the space where no one is checking, is the only version of you that is actually real. Everything else is a performance. And here is what most people get backwards. They think the public version of themselves is the one that matters. So they spend their energy managing appearances. They want to look disciplined more than they want to be disciplined. They want to look successful more than they want to become someone who deserves success. But greatness has never been built from the outside in. It has always been built from the inside out. The person you become in private eventually becomes the person you cannot help but be in public, because character doesn't stay hidden forever. Eventually it shows up in how you handle pressure, how you handle silence, how you handle the moments when everything you built is tested at once. So build there. Build in the private hours. Build when no one is grading you. Build when the only audience is your own conscience. Because that is the only audience whose opinion will still matter to you when you're old and looking back at the life you actually lived. Let's talk about discipline, because people confuse it with motivation constantly, and that confusion costs them years. Motivation is a feeling. It rises and falls like weather. Some mornings you'll wake up and feel like you could conquer anything. Other mornings you'll wake up exhausted before you even start, questioning why you're doing any of this at all. If you build your entire life around motivation, you will build a life with more gaps than progress. Because motivation was never designed to be reliable. It was designed to be occasional, a spark, not a foundation. Discipline is different. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. Discipline says, I made a commitment and I will honor it, regardless of the weather in my head today. Discipline is the version of you that shows up on the days motivation forgot to. And every single time you honor a promise you made to yourself, even a small one, you are making a deposit into a kind of trust account. The next time life gets hard, you can withdraw from that account. You can remind yourself, I have kept my word to myself before. I can do it again. But every time you break a promise to yourself, even a small one, you are making a withdrawal from that same account, except this account can go into debt. And self-trust debt is one of the most expensive debts a person can carry. Because it doesn't just cost you the missed workout, or the skipped page, or the broken routine. It costs you your belief that you're the kind of person who follows through. And without that belief, everything else you try to build sits on a shaky foundation. Your relationship with yourself is the longest relationship you will ever have. It started before anyone else showed up in your life, and it will still be running after everyone else has come and gone. You can have money and still feel hollow if that relationship is broken. You can have recognition and still feel invisible if you've spent years abandoning yourself in small ways nobody else could see. The first person you owe loyalty to is the person you are becoming, the future version of you, who is quietly watching every decision you make today, waiting to see if you'll choose them. Imagine, just for a moment, standing face to face with yourself 5 years from now. Not as a fantasy, but as a real conversation. What would that version of you say? Would they thank you for the mornings you got up, when it would have been easier to stay in bed? Would they thank you for choosing the harder right over the easier wrong, when nobody was going to know the difference? Or would they ask you, quietly, without anger, but with something heavier than anger, why you had everything you needed to become extraordinary, and chose familiar instead? That question should not leave you easily. It shouldn't, because every decision you make today is a message you are sending to that future version of yourself, and they cannot unreceive it. The habits you're building right now, in this ordinary week that feels like nothing special, are quietly becoming the life you'll be living when it finally feels like something. People love to imagine success as a single dramatic moment. The lucky break, the phone call that changes everything, the one audition, the one investor, the one yes that flips the script overnight. And sometimes on the surface, it looks like that's exactly what happened. But if you could rewind the footage and watch the years before that moment, you would see something far less cinematic. You would see someone showing up on ordinary Tuesdays. You would see someone reading when they were tired. You would see someone practicing a skill in an empty room with no one watching and no guarantee it would ever matter. Success is rarely the lightning bolt. It's usually the invisible accumulation of 1,000 unremarkable choices that nobody was there to witness. That is the power of the compound effect, and it is one of the most underestimated forces in a person's life. A 1% shift in your direction doesn't look like much today. It won't show up in a before and after photo. It won't make anyone stop and notice. But stretch that 1% shift across months, across years, and it becomes an entirely different trajectory, an entirely different destination, an entirely different person standing at the end of it. Small choices don't feel powerful in the moment they're made. They only reveal their power in hindsight, which is exactly why so many people abandon them too early. They're planting seeds and then digging them up the next day, because they don't see a tree yet. Your life is not changed by what you do occasionally. It is changed by what you do repeatedly. Your routine, the boring, unglamorous, repeated structure of your average day, is your future wearing a disguise. Look closely at what you do without thinking, the automatic choices, the default reactions, the way you spend your evenings when nobody's asking anything of you. And you will see exactly where your life is heading, whether you meant to send it there or not. Every habit is a vote. Every morning you wake up and cast a ballot for the person you are in the process of becoming. Every choice to learn instead of scroll is a vote. Every choice to move your body instead of numbing it is a vote. Every choice to keep a promise to yourself instead of quietly letting it slide is a vote. No single vote determines the election, but the pattern of your votes over time absolutely determines the outcome. You don't become disciplined by waiting until you feel disciplined. You become disciplined the same way you become anything, by practicing the behavior until the identity catches up to it. Confidence works the exact same way. And this is where most people get stuck for years without realizing it. They believe confidence is something you either have or don't have, some trait handed out unevenly at birth. So they wait for it. They wait to feel confident before they try the hard thing, before they speak up, before they take the leap. But confidence was never meant to come first. Confidence is built the same way a callus is built, through repeated contact with something difficult until it stops being able to hurt you the way it used to. You do the hard thing while scared, and something in you notices that you survived it. Do that enough times and the fear starts losing its grip. Not because the hard thing got easier, but because you got harder to shake. This is exactly why so many people search for confidence in all the wrong places, while avoiding the only place it's actually manufactured. They want the reward, but they flinch from the process that produces it. They want to feel unshakable, but they organize their entire life around avoiding the situations that would make them unshakable. And then they wonder why the confidence never arrives. It was never going to arrive by waiting. It only arrives by doing. Let's talk honestly about pain. Because pain is not optional in this life, no matter how carefully you plan around it. The question was never whether you'll experience pain. The question is what kind of pain you're willing to choose. There is a pain that comes from discipline. Waking up early hurts a little. Saying no to distractions hurts a little. Choosing the workout, the study session, the difficult conversation, all of it carries a small cost today. And there is a different pain, quieter but heavier, that comes from looking back years from now and realizing you never even tried. That second pain doesn't show up immediately, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. It waits. It compounds in silence, the same way discipline compounds in silence, except it compounds into regret instead of strength. Failure and regret are not the same weight, even though people often fear them equally. Failure says, you attempted something and it didn't work. That's a story you can live with, because it has dignity inside it. Regret says something colder. Regret says you never gave yourself the chance to find out. There is no dignity to hide inside that sentence. It just sits there unfinished forever. So when you're deciding which pain to choose carefully. Choose the pain that builds something. Choose the pain that has a return on it. Even if that return takes years to show up, your mindset decides which category your struggles fall into. Two people can experience the exact same setback and walk away with completely different futures, not because the setback was different, but because the meaning they attached to it was different. One person loses an opportunity and says, "My life is over." Another person loses the same opportunity and says, "This is forcing me to build something better than what I was settling for." The event didn't control the outcome. The interpretation did. Your mindset creates the meaning, and the meaning creates the action that follows it. This is not a small detail. This might be the single most decisive factor in how your life actually turns out. An untrained mind will always default to comfort. It will always search for the exit, the excuse, the easier explanation. That's not a character flaw. That's just what an unpracticed mind does when it hasn't been asked to do anything harder. But a trained mind understands something the untrained mind never will. Difficulty is not the obstacle blocking your growth. Difficulty is the location where your growth actually happens. There is no other address for it. You cannot order strength for delivery. You have to go stand in the place that builds it. Your mind works like a muscle in every sense that matters. Whatever you exercise gets stronger, whether or not you're doing it on purpose. If you practice worry, worry gets sharper. If you practice excuses, excuse-making becomes instinctive, almost elegant, the way a skill becomes elegant with repetition. But if you practice courage, courage becomes just as instinctive. If you practice discipline, discipline stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like identity. Every single day, whether you notice it or not, you are training something. The only real question worth asking is, what exactly are you training yourself to become? Are you training yourself to quit at the first sign of resistance? Or are you training yourself to keep moving through it? Are you training yourself to look for someone to blame? Or are you training yourself to look for what you can actually control? Are you training yourself to need constant validation to keep going? Or are you training yourself to become someone who can walk through uncertainty and calmly say, "I will figure this out"? That person, the one who can stand in the middle of chaos without collapsing, is not born that way. That person is built, one uncomfortable rep at a time, through countless private moments of choosing growth over the easier alternative. Responsibility is where all of this either becomes real or stays theoretical. Taking full responsibility for your life does not mean life suddenly becomes fair. It doesn't mean the storms stop coming, or that people stop disappointing you, or that plans stop falling apart in ways you never saw coming. What changes is not the weather around you. What changes is your position inside it. You stop being someone the weather happens to and start becoming someone who responds to it on your own terms. Blame feels good in the moment because it hands the discomfort to someone else. But blame is expensive because along with the discomfort, you also hand away your power. When you blame your past, you let your past keep deciding your future. When you blame other people, you let other people's choices decide your emotional state. When you blame circumstances, you convince yourself, slowly and quietly, that you are powerless. And a person who believes they're powerless stops looking for the door even when it's right in front of them. But the person who says, "This is my responsibility," becomes dangerous in the best possible way, because they stop waiting for rescue. They start asking a completely different set of questions. Not who can fix this for me, but what can I actually do right now? Not why is this happening to me, but what is this trying to teach me? That shift in questioning is small on paper and enormous in practice, because it's the exact line that separates people who build a life from people who simply endure one. Nobody can do this work for you. And honestly, that's not a burden. That's the whole point. Nobody can lift the weights and hand you the strength. Nobody can read the books and hand you the wisdom. Nobody can sit through the difficult seasons and hand you the character that gets built there. People can inspire you. People can guide you. People can walk beside you for stretches of the road. But nobody can become you. That responsibility, uncomfortable as it sometimes feels, belongs entirely to you, and that is exactly what makes it yours to shape. There is a version of you that exists right now, only as potential, unclaimed, waiting. A version that wakes up when the alarm goes off instead of negotiating with it. A version that keeps promises even when breaking them would be easy and invisible. A version that walks into difficult rooms with quiet confidence, not because they're fearless, but because they've already proven to themselves, privately, over and over, that they can handle hard things. That person does not show up by accident. That person is constructed day by day, choice by choice, sacrifice by sacrifice, mostly in moments nobody else will ever know happened. And here's the part people underestimate the most. It doesn't take one massive decision to become that person. It takes a single decision to start, and then it takes the willingness to keep making that same decision again tomorrow, and the day after, long after the initial motivation has completely worn off. Someone decides to stop making excuses. Someone decides to take their health seriously. Someone decides to finally learn the skill they've been putting off for years. That decision becomes the first brick, and a life is never built in a single day. It's built one brick at a time, by someone who kept showing up long after it stopped feeling exciting. The problem is that most people get impatient with the building process. They want to see the finished structure while they're still laying the foundation. And when they can't see it yet, they assume nothing is happening. But nothing could be further from the truth. A farmer does not plant a seed today and dig it up tomorrow to check if it's grown, because the farmer understands something most people forget. Growth has seasons, and some of the most important seasons happen entirely underground, invisible, unglamorous, unphotographed. Roots are forming even when nothing seems to be happening above the surface. Strength is developing in silence. Preparation is taking place exactly when it looks like nothing is taking place at all. This is where most people quit, right at the exact point where the story was about to change. Not because they lacked talent, not because the path was wrong, but because they mistook invisible progress for no progress, and gave up in the one season that would have led directly into the harvest. Anyone can stay motivated for a single dramatic week. Anyone can make promises when their emotions are running high. The real test, the one that actually separates outcomes, is who you are when the excitement fades, when the results are slow, when no one is watching to see if you keep going. The world does not need more people who start. The world has plenty of those. What the world actually needs, and what history actually rewards, are the people who finish, the people who stay committed after the emotion that got them started has long since disappeared. Because emotion is temporary by nature, commitment is not. A person who depends entirely on motivation will always be inconsistent, because motivation behaves like weather, unpredictable and uncontrollable. But discipline behaves like a foundation. It holds steady while everything around it shifts. Your challenges were never designed to prove that you're not enough. They were designed to reveal what was already inside you, strength you couldn't have discovered any other way. A diamond doesn't become valuable despite the pressure it endured. It becomes valuable because of it. Gold isn't prized because it avoided the fire. It's prized because it survived the fire and came out purified rather than destroyed. Your struggles work the exact same way if you let them. They are not there to break you down permanently. They are there to strip away everything false. So what remains is something real, something tested, something that can actually be trusted under pressure. But you have to be willing to stay in the process long enough for that transformation to happen. You have to be willing to keep working when nobody understands why. You have to be willing to keep believing in the vision before you have any proof that it's going to work out. Because that exact space, the uncomfortable gap between decision and evidence, is where character actually gets built. Anyone can act with conviction once the results are already in. Real character is built in the waiting room before the results arrive, when quitting would be quiet, invisible, and completely justifiable to everyone but you. Think for a moment about the people you quietly admire, the ones whose names carry weight when they're mentioned in a room. Almost none of them arrived at that weight by accident. Almost none of them were simply discovered, fully formed by a world that happened to notice them early. Somewhere behind the finished version stands a story of misunderstanding, a stretch of years where the people closest to them questioned the choice, doubted the timeline, or quietly waited for them to give up and rejoin everyone else's version of a normal life. They didn't continue because they had proof it would work. They continued because they had belief, and belief, unlike proof, does not require anyone else's permission to exist. The world has a strange habit of respecting the result, long before it respects the process that created it. People will celebrate the person standing on the stage without ever asking what the 5 years before that stage actually looked like. They see the achievement and assume it arrived cleanly, but they never see the quiet mornings that built it, the rejections absorbed without complaint, the version of that person who almost walked away and chose, one more time, not two. Every person who has built something real is carrying a hidden chapter, one made of setbacks nobody applauded, and a decision made privately. That temporary discomfort was a fairer trade than permanent regret. That decision is available to you too. It always has been. It doesn't require a dramatic circumstance to activate it. It doesn't require the perfect moment, because the perfect moment is a myth. People used to postpone the ordinary moment sitting right in front of them. You don't need to see the entire staircase to justify taking the first step. You don't need every answer lined up before you begin moving. You need enough courage to take the step you can actually see, and then enough discipline to take the next one when the excitement of the first step has already worn off. Somewhere in your life right now, there is a version of discipline waiting to be practiced that has nothing to do with anyone else's schedule or approval. A conversation you've been avoiding, a skill you've been meaning to start, a habit you know, deep down, is quietly working against the person you're trying to become. None of these require witnesses. None of these require anyone's applause to matter. They only require you, alone in the room, choosing the harder right over the easier wrong, and doing it again tomorrow, and the day after that, until the choosing stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like who you simply are. This is the quiet, unglamorous truth behind every transformation that ever looked impressive from the outside. It was never one dramatic leap. It was 1,000 small, private decisions made in rooms nobody else walked into, on days nobody else remembers, by someone who understood that the only opinion that ultimately determines the outcome is the one they hold about themselves when no one else is around to hear it. So, walk alone when you have to. Not out of bitterness, not out of arrogance, but because some seasons of building require silence, and silence is where you finally hear the parts of yourself that the noise has been drowning out. Build yourself in private without needing an audience to validate the work. Keep your promises to yourself even when breaking them costs you nothing visible. Because what you're actually protecting is not the promise itself, it's your ability to trust your own word. Choose the pain that builds you over the comfort that slowly erodes you, because comfort has never once produced a person capable of greatness, and it never will. One day, and it will come faster than you expect, you will look back at exactly this moment, the one you're in right now, reading these words. And you will realize that everything shifted the day you stopped waiting for permission. The day you stopped outsourcing your belief in yourself to people who were never going to give it to you. The day you finally understood that the greatest project you will ever be responsible for building is not a career, not a reputation, not anything the world can hand you or take away. It's you, so stand up. Take responsibility. Make the decision today, not the version of today that keeps getting postponed, but this one right now. Walk when nobody is walking beside you. Work when nobody is applauding. Believe when nobody else can see what you see. Because the person who learns to build themselves in silence eventually creates a life loud enough to speak entirely for itself. Your future is not waiting for a better version of somebody else to show up and save it. Your future is waiting, patiently, for the stronger version of you to finally arrive.